Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. Today is part 4 in the Getting Prepared series. This is something a little different than I normally do. These are shorter episodes. Hopefully, they appeal to somebody who hasn't really necessarily listened to the show before. And it's a 5-part series of about 15-minute episodes where we talk about exactly that, getting prepared, getting going. And, a lot of times people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm scared about, this world event or that world event. And I think I need to have a year's worth of food and, an underground storage tank of fuel and all that. No, you don't. What prepping and preparedness is all about looking after you and yours for the most likely disasters and personal issues that you may end up facing. So far in this series, we've talked about water, we've talked about food, we've talked about, we're talking about backup power tonight. And last week we talked about documentation and planning. So right at this point, if you followed along, if you spend 2 months building up supplies and spend less than $100, you now have enough food and water to last you and your family for a week to 2 weeks, and all the planning and documentation you need to survive any little issues like that. And now tonight, we're going to talk about the one that everybody's going to say, oh my God, this is where I have to spend the money. And this is backup power and fuel storage. And guess what? It's not going to be nearly as expensive as you think. And I'm not selling you anything, not at all. I'm just telling you about the items you can get and hopefully where you can go get them that are going to be a little bit cheaper. And to be honest, there's really only one thing you end up needing to buy in your to help with your preps that's going to help. So let's deal with it. Okay. So first off, like I said, you don't need a $40,000 generator with a 5,000 gallon underground fuel storage tank. That's not what we're talking about. I want to give you a fact here. The average North American power outage lasts for 4 hours. That means that 50% of all power outages in North America last less than 4 hours. Most power outages can be weathered rather comfortably without any preparation whatsoever. 4 hours, you might sit around, you might get a little cool, you might put a sweater on. 9 months of the year in most parts of North America, you can easily survive without any heating or cooling. So for the most part, a power outage isn't that big of a deal, except when it is. Now, sometimes you get longer power outages. And the first thing that I'm going to tell you about, or we're going to talk about, and this is something that, almost all government organizations, everybody recommends, and that's putting together a blackout kit. And the cool thing is, most people already have on hand pretty much anything that you would need to help make a power outage a little more comfortable. The problem is that the candles are on the wife's shelf, the lighters are out in the guy's garage, the backup battery bricks for charging your phone are dead upstairs in your kid's bedroom. And, all of the stuff you have, if it was just looked after properly and put in one central location, would be a huge step in the right direction for being able to more easily weather a power outage. How about flashlights? Do you have flashlights? Probably. Are the batteries are dead in it? Also probably. But do you have batteries in your house that would fit it? Also probably. And if you don't, that's not a big investment. So bring it all together. Where I put it is in my nightstand drawer, because the big issue there is the biggest inconvenience of a power outage is when it happens after dark. And the highest probability is that if it happens after dark, you're probably going to be in bed. And if you need to get up and check on things, what do you need? It'd be nice to be able to reach over, open up that desk, the end table drawer, and pull out whatever it is. For me, the big thing I keep in there is a headlamp, so I can look like an old man geek and walk around. But I have enough for me and the wife and the kids. I have a way to go down and check on things down in the basement to make sure there's no water coming in, make sure the freezers are still good, that kind of stuff. But it's all about just bringing everything together. So some flashlights, a battery bank for your cell phones, maybe you want to put some candles in there, maybe you don't, a lighter, some matches. If your wife is like my wife, she probably has a lot of those funny scented candles on a shelf somewhere. You light 2 or 3 of those up, and all of a sudden, you've got what you need. I love headlamps because It helps keep both hands free because even though you're in the dark, but you can see a little bit with the headlamp, if you trip, it's nice to have both hands free so you don't end up, really, really hurting yourself. Now, so that's the first step, just gathering the supplies and putting together a good power outage kit. Check your batteries, inspect your flashlights. Remember, we always talk about once a year inspection, something like that. Just test them, because the last thing you want to do is just leave batteries in your flashlight and they end up leaking or going bad and ruining the flashlight. So if it's going to be long term, take the flashlight, take the batteries out, store the batteries separate. Simple as that. Now, do you have a barbecue? If you have a natural gas or a propane barbecue, well, natural gas is ideal, but if you don't, if you have a propane barbecue, number one, never let that tank go below half. That's the first thing. So if you can, get yourself a second tank, and when that one gets half full, swap it out and go fill it. Or if you're down to about half propane or you've used it for a while, go and fill it before it runs out. So you always have a way. The big thing is, if you've got a barbecue, you can cook, but more importantly, you can brew coffee. That's what I need. So number one, if you have a barbecue or if you have a camp stove, whatever it is, just make sure you have fuel on hand for it. And that's something you're going to have if you're going camping, or if you're having a backyard football party. You're going to want to have fuel on hand, and it's just inconvenient to run out of it. So why not keep it full? Remember, I'm going to say this a couple of times, but it costs no more to keep something full than to let it go empty once you've spent that money up front. Okay, so beyond that, now you're probably saying, well, that's great, Tim. You told me how to get through a power outage, how to just survive through a short one. And you told me how to cook and brew some coffee. But I have a fridge, I have a freezer, I have a sump pump, and maybe it gets cold here and I need to heat. So what the hell do I do then? Well, first off, you don't need a generator. Really? Yes. And you don't need to keep any fuel on hand. Really? Also, yes. Now, are both of those items great to have? Sure, maybe in a year or 2 years down the road. But this is all about getting you and your family taken care of for the lowest budget we can, based on what you already have on hand for the most part. Now, there's a good chance that you already have a $40,000 generator parked in your driveway. I can almost guarantee you do. Or, well, I mean, unless you live in a city, and that's a different story, and we'll talk about that. But for your average North American, they still have at least one vehicle parked in their yard. And that is a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $20,000. I don't know where you're going to find a $20,000 vehicle, but that is a power generator. Now, bear with me. First off, repeat after me. Never let your tank go below half. I'm going to say it one more time. Never let your tank go below half. Now, my wife and I, for a lot of years, used to run ours on absolute empty all the time. And this is a hard thing to hear, and it was really hard for us when we were really struggling for a lot of years. But it really doesn't cost any more to keep your tank full than it does to let it go empty, because you're still burning the same amount of gas all the time. So if you can get in the habit of every day or every 2 days, whatever you've burnt, going back to the gas station and filling it, or instead of waiting until you get empty, wait till you're half empty, then go and fill it. Because the average vehicle in North America has around a 15-gallon tank of gas. For us Canadians, that's 60 liters. The average vehicle can idle. You ready for this? Can just sit there on idle with a full tank for a day and a half on idle. Now, where do we go from there? This is the spot. So far, nothing I've talked about has cost you any more than what you're already spending on day-to-day life. The thing you want to end up buying is a 1500 watt inverter. Now, the cool thing is some vehicles are starting to come with stuff like that built in. And if you're looking at buying a new vehicle, try to find one that has a 1500 watt inverter built in. Some of the trucks have them in the back of the box of the truck, but most still don't. So this is where your little investment's going to come up. Amazon or Harbor Freight, and I don't care what kind it is. If it's 1500, you want 1500 running watts. A lot of times they're going to be 2000 or 3000 peak watts. But you want to go and look, and they're going to look like a little, like a little box, almost like a part of a car stereo system. You're going to buy one of those, and you're going to learn right away how to hook it up to your battery. It's probably just going to have a couple of clamps, like little roach clips or alligator clips that just clamp onto the red and the black. These have to be run directly from the battery. You can't run something like a fridge or a freezer off that little 150 watt plug you have in your dashboard. You're going to burn it out or blow a fuse. Just not going to work. Okay. So this, I priced a bunch right now. So this is what, middle of April 2022, and those 1500 running watt inverters are around $100. So right now we've doubled our investment. We spent $100 to get food and water started, and now we spent $100 to get an inverter. Okay, that's the only thing that I'm going to mention to you that's really worth getting. So keep your fuel tank full, buy yourself a 100-watt inverter, a 1500-watt inverter generator, and then learn how to hook it up. Now, you're going to say, well, Tim, 1500 watts isn't a whole hell of a lot. I got a fridge, a freezer, a sump pump, and a space heater that I want to run. Well, I'm going to tell you a trick, okay? And this is so simple. I mean, obviously, I can't take credit for it because I've heard it from a bunch of different people, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to cycle. You don't need to run your entire house all at once. You're just here to survive this power outage and make sure you don't lose anything. I mean, how quick would losing an entire deep freeze full of meat pay for or cost more than that $100 inverter? Again, we're looking after our family and we're getting insurance to look after it. Okay. So first off, a freezer is good for 2 or 3 days minimum without ever opening it. So you don't even have to worry about it. Wrap some blankets around it. Don't worry about it. Stuff in the fridge, either start eating it or once or twice a day, plug it into that inverter with an extension cord, let it run for half an hour, let the fridge cool down, then unplug it. There. Now you've got that thermal mass in there, keeping everything cold. Don't open the doors. Don't let your kids go in there and do the teenage thing where they open the door and they're like, Mom, there's nothing to eat. Don't let them do it. Put a ratchet strap around it if you have to. Anyway, so let it run for half an hour, turn it off. Your freezer, once a day, plug it in, let it run for a half hour or an hour, get it down to temperature. That's all you need to do. Sump pump, same thing. You know, as long as you don't have a finished basement and you're just trying to get rid of water so it doesn't build up, you can cycle in and cycle out. You may need to run your sump pump a little more often, but run it as needed. So you're switching out. You've got the capacity to run any one of these individual items at one time without spending a whole lot of money. And then you're taking care of all of those issues. Now, you can say, Tim, I'm going to get cold. Well, you can run a space heater as well. That's the max. Most of those electric space heaters are 1500 watts. There's other ways to do it, but I just want to tell you by using things you probably already have on hand and probably the safest thing. So make sure you have a good thick extension cord that you can run into your house. I run mine through my doggy door. It works great. And then just cycle it down. Now, if you've run your fridge, your freezer, and your sump pump, and you don't need to keep heat going all the time, go out there and turn your vehicle off. Because if you're not sure how long this power outage is going to be, don't let it sit there and idle and waste gas. Because the last thing you want to have to do is go to the gas station and fight with all the hordes of people who also didn't have a full tank of gas. So make sure it's full, or at least half full all the time. Cycle through your different appliances in your house, and then turn off the vehicle when you're not using it. Those are the keys to get that fuel to last a long, long time. So for $100, you can keep your fridge. If you're careful and you run, say you idle your car for 5 hours a day, you can run that for an entire week. So on 15 gallons of gas in your vehicle with a $100 inverter, you can keep your fridge, your freezer, and your basement dry for an entire week on a $100 investment for $100 worth of an inverter. And then if you want to get into storing 3 more 5-gallon cans of gasoline in your garage, if you have the space for it, you can double your fuel capacity. You can bump that up to 2 weeks simply based on, well, depending on what the price of gas is at the moment. But that's it, guys. It's that dead simple. You don't need a tri-fuel generator, although those are fun to have. You don't need a whole home generator plumbed into the natural gas with a backup, everything and anything, and 12,000 gallons of fuel. You just don't. You can look after your family for a significant portion of time for not a whole lot of money. But remember, skills are just as important as supplies. So take your time and learn how to hook that up ahead of time, learn what it'll run, and keep some fuses on hand, because sometimes you'll end up accidentally, say, plugging 2 things in, or something might have a little too much of a draw. But practice this ahead of time. Run your extension cords in, run your fridge on it for a little bit, make sure it works. Run your space heater, run your sump pump, and then if you blow a fuse, you'll know how to change the fuses out. You want all this stuff to happen before you need to be outside in -20 or, a Category 3 hurricane trying to get your vehicle running with your inverter on it and have everything hooked up. So it's that simple, guys. All right, that's it for today. Here we are, 200 bucks in, and we've done food, water, planning and documentation, and now backup power, and you're good for a solid week. Not bad, hey? Really not that much money. Less than probably 2 meals out if you're going to a decent restaurant, right? So the last one coming up is going to be first aid. I'm excited about talking about that as well. I hope you enjoyed this series. You want to know more about me? toolmantim.co. That's the best place to check. And also subscribe to the podcast if you're interested. We do deep dives into preparedness and reparedness and really cool interviews with a lot of neat people from around the entrepreneurship and the preparedness world. So guys, thanks for dropping by. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.